Now let's take a look in the Bible concerning capitalism. Some historians and economists state that the beginning of the economic system called capitalism traces back to the end of a political and economic system in medieval Europe based on hierarchy called feudalism. In reality, capitalism can be traced all of the way back to the Bible. And although the word capitalism did not exist, the economic system of capitalism can be seen clearly. Socialism can also be traced all of the way back to the Bible. And although the word socialism did not exist, the economic system of socialism can be seen clearly. For information about socialism, our lecture, The Truth About Socialism, will enlighten you on this and other truth concerning socialism that people have attempted to deceive Americans about. First, let's cover some verses in the Old Testament concerning capitalism in the King James Version of the Bible. Remember, capitalism is a system of exploitation and oppression, and today in the 21st century, employers are still exploiting and oppressing the workers. Under the law that was given by God to Moses for the Israelites, Leviticus chapter 19, verse 13 reads as follows: "Thou shalt not defraud thy neighbor, neither rob him. The wages of him that is hired shall not abide with thee all night until the morning." In other words, the employer is not to cheat the worker and rob the worker of wages. The employer is not to hold on to the worker's wages until the next morning. The worker is to be paid by the employer. Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 14 reads as follows: "Thou shalt not oppress an hired servant that is poor and needy, whether he be of thy brethren or of thy strangers that are in thy land within thy gates." In other words, the employer is not to oppress an employee who is poor and needy, whether the employee is a fellow Israelite or a stranger in the land. Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 15 reads as follows: "At his day thou shalt give him his hire, neither shall the sun go down upon it, for he is poor and setteth his heart upon it, lest he cry against thee unto the Lord, and it be sin unto thee." In other words, the employer is to pay the employee on the same day, before the sun sets, because the employee is poor and in need of the money. The consequence of the employer not doing this will result in the employer committing a sin. Jeremiah chapter 22, verse 13 reads as follows: "Woe unto him that buildeth his house by unrighteousness, and his chambers by wrong, that useth his neighbor's service without wages, and giveth him not for his work." In other words, woe to the employer who receives labor from the employee and refuses to pay the employee. Malachi chapter 3, verse 5 reads as follows: "And I will come near to you to judgment, and I will be a swift witness against the sorcerers, and against the adulterers, and against false swearers, and against those that oppress the hireling in his wages, the widow and the fatherless, and that turn aside the stranger from his right, and fear not me, saith the Lord of hosts." In this verse concerning employers, in the part of the verse that states, "and against those that oppress the hireling in his wages," God is saying that he will draw near in judgment and be a swift witness against employers who oppress their employees in wages. In other words, employers who oppress employees in wages will have to answer to God for their actions. Now, these verses that I just read were law for the Israelites. The law was given by God to Moses for the Israelites, and the Israelites were to follow the law. God specifically laid out the way in which employers were to treat employees, and the consequences for employers who refused to follow the law and oppressed their employees. These verses are straightforward, and employers were under God's command concerning how they were to treat their employees. God did not allow oppression of employees. Now, just as capitalism in the 21st century is a system of exploitation and oppression, where employers exploit and oppress workers, capitalism in the Old Testament was a system of exploitation and oppression, and was addressed by God in his law that was given to the Israelites through Moses. And under God's law, corrupt employers were specifically addressed. In the Old Testament, commerce and trade existed. People engaged in business and would buy and sell goods. People hired workers for their labor. Employer and employee relationships existed. Capitalism clearly existed, although the word capitalism did not exist. We'll stop here for today, and we'll pick it up in the next video.